Hey, good evening, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hey, Rick, how you doing? Uh, so it's episode 111, and it is third week of September already. It's crazy that we are going through uh, the month and the year like we are. But we got back in town last. Hey, Dave. Yeah, we got back in town last Tuesday, so we really didn't have a lot except for the pictures from LS Fest. Some of them I've gotten. I had one SD card that my daughter took pictures of, and I couldn't find it, or I thought I found it, but it wouldn't. Nothing was on the disc, and I was really upset about it. But I did some more digging. I found another SD card sitting not where it should have been anyway, and there was her picture. So she got 658 pictures from LS Fest. So it's taking me some time to get through that and get the content done for that show, but we're working on that. Hey, Rick, Ryan. Good evening. Glad everybody could make it out tonight. So so we're trying to get wheels going again. Scott and I took the Olnick out to the body shop, so that's making further progress. Hopefully the guy's not going to sleep on it too long, but I may have to go out and do some video on that. I like to kind of wrap the engine swap, kind of wrap that up. So I'm gonna look at that, see if there's anything I can do, if I need to fill in some extra footage and get that wrapped up. Like I said, we're gonna get the LS Fest wrapped up, and just try to get some stuff going on. So other things going on in the shop. I'm working on the '69 Corvette, the one we've talked about that on many shows. Chasing engine running issues, and I think I found the smoking gun. However, parts got here late, so I wasn't able to finish it before the show, so we'll have to wait till next week to get the final word. But I do believe I've got that thing under control now, and we're making progress again on Scott's Skylark. Got the engine here at the shop and got it apart. Got the crank and a couple connecting rods, the rebuilt harmonic balancer, and the new flex plate at MPR race engines, and they're going to go ahead and get that all balanced up for us. So once we get that balanced, we'll go ahead and get that motor put back together and get that back in the car. That's been almost 2 years that things have been apart, so we need to get that wrapped up. And what else we got going on here? So I did some work on the compressor building. I know, I just figured it's time to get that thing wrapped up. I believe I showed some pictures a couple weeks ago. We got the roof frame on and we welded that in, and then I got one of the barn doors made. I went ahead and last week finished the second door, and then over the weekend I went ahead and got a roof on it, and then tinned it up. So let me show you some pictures of that. Let's see here. All right, so there's the back of the shop, and here's our little building I built for to hold the compressor out of the shop. And it's been out here since I built the building 5 years ago, and it's been under a tarp, so it's been a major pain to use the shop air, because you have to go out back, pull the tarp off the compressor, and obviously turn on the air line, and then go back in and turn the power on, and it was just kind of a hot mess. So excuse me. So kind of hard to see in this picture. Let's see if I can. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do for roofing. I had some old hurricane panels that were made out of aluminum, so they weren't really legal panels, but being that they had tall ridges, all the roof panels were similar to what the building surfaces are here, so very little bit of ridge in them, so the rigidity of the panels isn't very strong. They're pretty weak, actually. So with these aluminum roof panels, aluminum hurricane panels, they have a lot more structural rigidity to them, so we went ahead and did that. Let me see here. Yes, this picture kind of shows it a little better here. Let me zoom in. Nope. So at this angle, you can see the height of the corrugation in the panel, so it made a lot more rigid. It's still going to get an end cap put on out here to keep them all tight, but that worked out real nice. So let me this is a bad angle, so it's kind of hard to see, but there's the complete building, and the two panel doors. Now, of course, I need to put some trim molding all around all this stuff, but at least it's enclosed now. The compressor is in there, uncovered, and now I can go ahead and run the shop air lines inside the shop, and we won't be working off of an air hose around the building. And the way it's been, it hasn't been good. There's a picture with the doors open, compressor. I've got some waste oil in there, but from the outer edge to the peak in the back is over 12 foot, so I can get full sticks of tubing in there. And my next thing is I want to put a shelving rack right here for all the scrap tubing, round, square, angle iron, aluminum, bar stock, stuff like that, so that I can get everything out from underneath the lathe right now. All the extra materials all in the back of the shop under the lathe and around the milling machine. It makes it pretty messy and nasty back there. There's a kind of an inside shot of in this piece of tubing there is 12 foot, so you can see I've got a couple inches left to go. But yeah, it's coming out nice. Another picture is, it's hard to see with the sun, but it's the same material that the building was made out of, same color, same extra. Actually, what I did was told the builders when they built the building, if you got any scrap, don't take it. Leave all the scrap you got. So I was able to put all the structure in the building to hang the circuit panel and put the weatherhead for the electric and all that stuff. I was able to use all the scrap tubing that they had left over to put all that in. And then they left me enough panels that I built that entire compressor room, and I still actually have 2 sheets left over. So I put them on Marketplace for somebody to come and get them for free, and hopefully that'll happen here soon, and we'll have that all done. So that'll be big changes here. Finally, I've gotten so used to using battery tools because it was such a pain to use the air tools. It'd be really nice to be able to use my air belt sander and grinders and cutoff wheels and stuff once again. Hey Chris, how you doing? Yes, that was good. Finally got that all squared away, and that was nice that we don't have to deal with that thing anymore. So the other thing I was thinking about, we haven't really mentioned too much in the last show or not, is the new shop inspector. I told you guys he was doing real good on the trips to LS Fest and stuff like that. So just to give you guys a little memory lane, here he is. That was August 4th when we picked him up. He was, I think he was 11 weeks old, and he weighed like 13 pounds, 14 pounds. So he's been growing good. Trying to see, there's a picture playing in the pool. Here's the kiddie's pool, so you can kind of hard reference wise, but he's basically doubled in size. He's definitely doubled in weight, and has a lot of fun in the pool. And now he's actually getting pretty good at the, let me see here. Where did I put those other pictures at? Oh, here he is. He's actually getting pretty comfortable in the regular swimming pool also. So he knows he can stand up on the steps. He knows where the steps are. Playing catch and stuff, he's fallen in the pool a couple times, but he's getting his way around pretty good. And here's a picture from before LS Fest, where he's doing his inspection work. We had Dave's car detailed, so it was ready to go to the show. Clay barred and a little spray wax and cleaned up the chrome and stuff. And here you can see the inspectors inspecting the job, make sure the car was properly ready to go in the trailer and head to the show. So he's working on his credentials. He's still a little loose in the shop. I got to follow him around. He likes to pick up zip ties and stuff like that, but we're getting there. And I was sent this picture from my wife, and I think he's trying to get ready for certifications to become an official shop inspector. So he's got his little bow tie on and ready to accept his credentials. He's not quite ready there, but at least he's working on it to get through to that point. So that's kind of the updates on Benji. He's doing good. He's 4 months old now, and he's doing good. I think we're on almost 2 weeks now without any accidents in the house or the shop, so that's great. Chris says the truck for sale looks good. A lot of work for the price. I can't wait to see him. So yeah, that's a buddy of mine's truck. I actually don't have it here. I built the engine for it. I think we showed some video on the channel. It's got a 351 Windsor that I built for it, Terminator X Max. Matt, the owner of the truck, has done most of the work, but I've done the tuning work and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's a good value for somebody. I mean, it just needs a little paint, and it's in pretty good shape. The interior's in pretty fair shape, and you know, it's what can I say? I do believe somebody mentioned on the on Facebook Marketplace that he should have put some under the hood pictures and some engine running pictures on there. I agree with that, but I got it, Chris. You can't wait to see him. You're talking about Benji. Yeah, you'll have to come by some Saturday. It's been a minute. But anyway, yeah, that's a good truck if anybody's interested. The whole running gear is all pretty much brand new in the truck. New tires and wheels and stuff, and make a good little work truck if you're looking for a Ford pickup. If you guys that haven't seen it, you can leave a comment in the comment section, and I can hook you up with pictures of it. I don't have anything I can show you here, but anyway, good running truck. So for our tech segment this week, For you guys that have been following the live or podcast, whatever you want to call them, we've been working on this 69 Corvette for a minute. We found rust in the fuel tank, and the fuel system was trashed with rust. We got through that. Still had some running issues. Found burnt plug wires on it, so we did a complete tune-up and everything. Made it run better, but still didn't fix the issues. Then when I was checking the camshaft, because it's a flat tappet cam, and a lot of times when you break in the cam, you can not do it correctly and get a round cam lobe. So I had the valve covers off, and I was checking that, and the cam lobe seemed to be good. Compression, cranking compression was good. I noticed that you couldn't, the rocker arm nuts were really big in the rocker arms, so that you couldn't adjust the lash in the rocker arms properly, because if you put the socket in there to turn the nut, it jammed it and gave you a bad reading. So we replaced the factory 11/32 nut, 11/16 nuts with poly locks that the hex is above the rocker arm, so that we could adjust the valve train to the proper spec. And it was off, but again, it made it run better, but it still wasn't the thing that was causing this engine to run bad. So I had some time since we got back in the shop that I wanted to get back on this thing and get it finalized and get it out of here. So I got my smoke machine out to check the exhaust. Now, one of the things that I have found over the years, quite a few header manufacturers, especially the lesser valued ones, don't always check the cross section of pipe where they weld the collector on. And you can have a pinhole in there, and it won't necessarily make an exhaust leak, but it will create a vortex where it's sucking fresh air into the exhaust, which then obviously it's going to affect your O2 readings or your wideband readings. So I went ahead and smoked the exhaust to verify that, and that was fine. There was some shoddy welding around the wideband sensor bung, but I had, in the past, I had saw that, and I went ahead and cleaned it up and went over it, and it was good. We had no leaks in the front half of the exhaust. The back half, the flow masters in the back were leaking, but that's 3-4 feet away from the wideband. That's not going to affect anything. So I then got the idea, this thing probably has an intake gasket leak. That's got to be the only other thing. So I went ahead and did the normal mechanic deal. Got a can of carb cleaner that's flammable and sprayed down all the gaskets around the throttle body, around the shafts, and the intake, the cylinder head gaskets on the top side. Obviously, you can't get to the ones in the valley. And everywhere I sprayed, the engine never changed tone to show that there was no air leak. So I was like, well, I'm pretty glad I didn't take the intake off, just to find out that that wasn't an issue. But then I got thinking about it. We smoked the crankcase of an engine to check for oil leaks. If you have a rear main seal that might be weeping, or a pinched gasket somewhere or anything, smoking the crankcase of the engine will show you if it's actually tight and will actually hold oil in it. So, but my thought was maybe the intake gasket's shifted and it's leaking in the valley. So here's the little video I taped. Let me I got to get this thing stopped. Here we go. So here's a little video on some of the diagnostics I just performed this week on the Vet. Okay, so we're working on this 69 Corvette. And we've been chasing a running problem with it, where when you put load on it, it starts popping back through the intake. We've checked valve springs, we've checked compression, we've checked cam lobes to make sure they're not worn out. We've adjusted the rocker. We've checked to make sure that the TDC mark is correct on the balancer, so the timing is correct. And we still haven't found the problem. So we got out the smoke machine, and this thing is fantastic. So what we've done here is we've got the smoke going into the crankcase, and we have the throttle body open, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's smoke coming out of the throttle body. Now, that would make you think, right? Why is there smoke coming out of the throttle body if you're putting smoke into the crankcase? The crankcase should be separated from the intake track. Well, you'd be right. But on this engine, I do believe we have intake gaskets leaking. And so whatever goes in the crankcase is going into the throttle body, and or throttle body and fuel is going into the crankcase, which is causing a lean misfire on one of the cylinders, and that's why it's backfiring through the throttle body. So after a long, strenuous chain of events in testing, we've now found the problem. And this is on a brand new engine that was recently built. So always never count that the motor is good. Always go through, do your due diligence, and you will eventually find the problem. And if you don't have one of these, you should get one of these. These things are great. You can put it in the crankcase like I have it and check for oil leaks. You can put it in the exhaust and check for exhaust leaks. I found many a header collector that had pinholes at where the four pipes merge at the collector. They weren't leaking exhaust, but they were leaking air and creating a bad, a lean mixture or a lean reading on the O2 sensor when it was air coming in that wasn't coming from the engine. So just a real good case study here, and just showing you guys how, you know, you have to just keep picking away at it till you find out where the problem lies. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the intake off this, and we'll see the issue. But at least with the smoke machine, I didn't take the intake off just as a inspection. We know now that there's an issue. So we'll go ahead and take this off, take the intake off, and we'll see where the problem is. So yeah, so I didn't realize I had went over all the things before again in the video, but yeah, so that's what we found. Now, when I had the throttle blade completely open, there was a little bit of smoke coming around the one throttle shaft. It didn't make a vacuum leak when the engine was running, but smoke was coming out. That smoke, when you use that machine, will come out of the smallest of access points. But it works good for anything. Like if back in the day, I've ran into mainly on mechanical fuel pump cars, on where you have the mechanical fuel pump on the engine block, and you're drawing fuel out of the car, and you have one that is having problems pulling a good volume of fuel out. I've had problems where you could have had a cracked fuel line somewhere sucking air, creating, you know, so the pump is sucking the air instead of the fuel. The smoke machine would show that. You can put it in the gas tank. Anything that is pressurized or is sealed, you can put the smoke machine in there, and it uses shop air, so it kind of will pressurize the cavity and forces the smoke out. And really good diagnostic tool. I myself should use it more often. Sometimes I kind of forget about it, but it really does a really good job at showing you issues. And I do know a couple engine shops that when they assemble an engine, they'll smoke it before they give it to the customer, just to make sure there's not going to be any oil leaks on them. So not a bad idea. Something I probably should start doing myself. But anyway, so here's I got the intake off, and now we'll discuss this. All right, so we got the intake off, and there's no smoking gun that you can see. However, they did use silicone behind the paper gasket, which is a huge no-no, and I think that may be what the problem was. They didn't get good coverage of silicone between the gasket, which that also would make the intake lift up. And I'm not real crazy about the size of the ports, so I'm got a Felpro gasket coming that is a little bit smaller port openings, so hopefully that's going to seal better. And there's a look at the cylinder head, and you can see down here, let me see, get a light on there, good, but right down in here, nothing's stuck there, and it's kind of weird looking. And you can get a pretty good picture there, getting a lot of reflection. And then here's the other side. And again, it doesn't look real great, and you can see the silicone coming out of the paper gasket. That's not the way you do this. So I believe that that's what probably happened, is that they put silicone on the paper gasket, and then they took their time getting it bolted down. The silicone hardened, and they didn't have a good even coating of silicone. So that's one of the reasons why you don't ever want to use silicone on paper. Besides that, you can see silicone. It doesn't look like it happened here, but the silicone will act like ball bearings on a paper gasket. And if you put it on when the silicone is wet, the gasket will actually shift as the silicone is squeezed. If you put the silicone on and let it skin, it won't do that. But then if you don't have an even thickness, you're going to have high and low spots, and that could cause an engine leak or a gasket leak. And since we saw the smoke coming out of the intake from the crankcase, we know that we definitely had a problem. So we got new gaskets coming, and we're going to glue it back on correctly and get this car fixed. So that's next. Yeah, so what I wanted to go back and let me show you here. You can kind of see. This is a pretty good picture here. Of course, it's the wrong bank, but you can see how they got silicone coming out here. There's a little bit of silicone there and there, and some on the outside, but there's nothing on this whole side or this one. So the coating of silicone was definitely not consistent. And when you're using silicone, that can take up a lot of space, and so. Like I said in the video, if it's skinned and they had thick and high and low spots in the silicone, it could physically hold the intake up a little bit and create the issue. Here's another spot where we got silicone pouring out here and some around this port, but nothing on this side and nothing out the bottom. So yeah, so not a good not good there. Chris says, make sure I don't use that engine builder. Yeah, and let me rephrase the fact that I don't know who put the intake on, whether it was the engine builder or the guy assembling the motor in the car. So that I don't know. But nevertheless, yeah, it was done incorrectly. So, all right. So here I got the gaskets tonight, literally 20 minutes before I went on the air. So let me just show you some stuff I wanted to show you. Unfortunately, I'll have to show you assembling the gaskets and the proper gluing method that I use, which has been dyno tested from when we have a race engine on a dyno and we got to put 4 or 5 different manifolds on and stuff like that. I've got a system that I use that works really well, so you can keep reusing the same gaskets over again. But anyway, here's what we did today. All right, so the new gaskets came in very late, so I won't have this back together for the show, but I just wanted to show you the process of putting it back together again. So what I've done here is I put the new intake gaskets on. You can see down here in a spot where it's not going to affect the sealing of the intake, I put some masking tape to hold the gaskets down. And the reason I want to do that is now I want to check to make sure that the manifold fits the engine. This is a pretty important step. A lot of people don't always take a look at. But what we want to do is we're going to set the manifold down, and then a lot of guys will call this the China rail. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the intake on, sit it down so that the ports are matching, and then we're going to see if we have a gap between the intake and the China rail. If it's touching, then the intake has been cut down and that China rail will need to be machined so that the intake can go far enough down in to seal completely. So it's one of those things when you're working on an engine that you didn't put together, or that you don't have the full history of, like on the cylinder heads and stuff. Anytime any of the surfaces, the block deck or the head deck surface, if they've been machined, it's very possible, well, the head will sit lower on the block if any of those surfaces have been machined. So we don't know if the block has been decked 2000s, 5000s, 15,000s. We don't know if the heads have been decked the same thing, couple thousand, maybe not at all, but being this was a fresh engine. But in performance racing engines, it's very common to do an angle cut on the cylinder head, where you take 0 off the intake rail side and you take 20, 30, all the way up to 100, 150 thousandths off the exhaust side. And what you do is you're rocking the head, changing the intake port angle, which can make considerable horsepower difference. But you have to make sure that the intake is still matching to what you're working with. So now I'm going to go ahead and stick this intake on and see where we're at. Okay, so there's the intake sitting on. You can see along this edge here, it looks like we have good contact all the way down. Now we'll take a feeler gauge and check the China rail. And the feeler gauge does fit in there, so we do have a gap. And just for argument's sake, we have a 28. We have a 32, a 30, and a 28 feeler gauge. So we have a stack of 90 thousandths. So that's a decent gap. But that also can let you know if you can go ahead and put the cork or rubber gaskets on the end. I typically will use only silicone on the ends of the China rail. But now we know that we need to have about 125 to 180 thousandths pass bead of silicone on the end rail so they seal properly. So now that we know that intake does fit on properly, we're going to go ahead and take this off, and then we'll start installing the gaskets. So what I like to do is take the intake gaskets off. And I'll use a contact cement. I prefer using gasket cinch, and I will coat this whole side of the gasket. Now, gasket cinch is very thin. It's adhesive, kind of like your weather strip adhesive, but it goes on with a wand, so it's easy to smooth around. So you paint the gasket side, you paint the head surface side, you let that tack up, and then you stick the gasket on. And I'll use a roller and roll it to make sure all the air is pushed out and that we've got a smooth surface. Now on these Felpro gaskets, you'll see they've got a blue silicone impression already on the gaskets. That's fine, but I want to make sure this thing doesn't leak, just in case there's a little bit of rot around the cooling passages in the intake or the heads. Obviously these heads are new, so they don't have that problem. The intake is used, so it's clean, but there could be some. So what I'll use there is I use Permatex Forma gasket. Now this is a liquid sealant, kind of a brown, some people call it aviation seal. I will use that on the top surface of the gasket. That way the gasket's going to get a real nice coating. We don't have to worry about these rings doing all of the sealing. The gasket's going to be firmly mounted to the cylinder head. This is going to put a nice coating on the top of the gasket. And the other thing it does is it allows you, if you had to, you could pull the intake back off and you'd probably be okay without ripping a gasket. But the gasket cinch didn't show up. Gaskets showed up late. So that'll be a job for tomorrow, but I'll show you guys when we get it all back together. So yeah, so that's where I'm at with the Corvette. So, like I said, a gasket cinch is a real thin adhesive cement, and it won't bubble up. You don't have to worry about too much buildup and causing issues like the silicone under the paper gasket would do. You don't have to worry about having a proper formation or proper thickness of the silicone all the way around. And that will make the gasket line up perfectly with the head port. And that the second thing that does is the intake gaskets are sitting on an angle because the engine's a V. So what that contact cement does is allows the gasket to be permanently mounted in the proper position. So that way, when you're putting your intake on, you can shuffle it around a little bit to make sure you got the port alignment 100% correct. If you like with the silicone, you don't have a chance to move that around. In fact, if you move around too much, it'll actually shift everything, and then you got to start all over again. And then, like I said, on the Forma gasket or aviation Permatex, whatever you want to call the brown liquid, again, it's very thin, but it's very tacky, and I like to paint the entire gasket, and it just does a real good job of getting good adhesion to from the gasket to the intake, especially, intakes, if they've been port matched, sometimes you might have a sander roll to go across the gasket surface, might make a little imperfection. You're using a razor blade to scrape or a gasket scraper to scrape the old gaskets off, and you put a nick in this gasket surface. That Forma gasket will just kind of take up all those little imperfections. Basically the same thing that the Felpro blue bead is supposed to do, but just giving you a little bit more insurance, because that bead area is so small, and when we coat the gasket with the Permatex, it just takes really good care of all that. And then of course we'll put a nice bead of silicone around the China rail. And then one good thing I'll show you guys next week is where the block and cylinder head and the China rail all meet. There's a triangle there where all 3 points meet. You have to get a good dab of silicone in there. I've seen many of intake installations where they ran the bead across, and they assumed that when it squished, it was going to work into all those corners, and then you end up getting an oil leak. And the oil leak will run down the cylinder head surface and then drip off the edge of the head. It looks like a valve cover gasket leaking. And, it's kind of hard to diagnose unless you use a dye light. But we'll go over all that stuff next week, and you'll see how I do it. Now, if this was going to be a dyno engine and we were going to run multiple intakes, I would still do the exact same process of the intake gaskets. But what I would do is take a real thin coating of Never-Seez and go across the intake manifold where the China rail is, and then use a little bit of wheel bearing grease, very fine, you can't even see it, but just kind of coat the aluminum on the gasket surface, and that way the Forma gasket will form to the imperfections of the intake, but it won't stick to the intake, and then you can take the intake back off and put it right back on. And the reason why that's so important when you're doing intake swaps on the dyno is you don't want to have you want your vacuum pump or dry sump to be able to pull the engine into a vacuum, so you get the ultimate ring seal. So whenever you're trying to make big horsepower, you always want to either have a vacuum pump or a dry sump pump or both on the engine, because what that does is puts a negative pressure in the crankcase, which then allows the rings to seal against the piston much better. That's why a dry sump system engine will typically make 20-50 horsepower more than it would if it was a regular open vented crankcase. So when you're on the dyno, we don't want to have to keep redoing the silicone on the China rails and then having to wait for it to dry before we can make another pull. When we do it this way, the silicone will actually make a thick gasket. It will line up perfectly, and then so each manifold will just sit down on top of it and seal it off, and you'll get you'll be able to put the crankcase into a negative pressure and be able to do back-to-back testing. So That's something I learned years ago. It works out really well, and it just makes it all good. And on a street engine or a race engine, putting them on using the system I do, I can't remember the last time I had an intake issue. Now, of course, all of your new engines, Coyotes and LS and all that, they all use O-ring stuff on it. And all your newer racing intakes for big block and small block and stuff like that, a lot of your higher end intakes, they'll be machined for O-ring. So that makes it way easier. See, Chris says, I like to see how you roll the gasket out. Yeah, I use it actually is a roller for putting on like sound deadening or print roller. Any kind of wheel that you can roll across that gasket to work all the air out and to make it as make the whole surface area of the gasket as concentric and as equal as possible. Ryan says, crazy how much a dry sump will make. Yeah, dry sumps definitely make horsepower. I'm in the process right now of trying to find a pump and pan for the Vet Hawk project because I want to go ahead and do that. Plus, then I got an oil tank that I can put on the passenger side to get the 50-50 balance left to right much easier. So, but yeah, whenever you can get a crankcase to be into negative pressure, that vacuum in the crankcase instead of pressure will help aid the rings to seal against the ring lands and the pistons. We're talking about very minute amounts, but between that and the dry sump sucking all the windage off the crankshaft, which makes the crankshaft and rotating assembly lighter because now you don't have all this oil flinging around. That's why when you're running a stroker crank or a good performance engine or race engine, you want to run a windage tray, you want to run a kicked out oil pan. All those things help to eliminate all the oil from bouncing back into the crankshaft, making it physically heavier while it's running and taking power away. So all those things are things you have to look at. The LS motors have pretty good windage trays in them, and then there's some nice trapdoor oil pans you can run with them. But if you can go to a dry sump, it's going to be that much more, because one inherent problem a lot of your newer engines have that are fully skirted. In other words, the block goes all the way down beyond the crankshaft. LS, all your Ford Modular, Coyote, the Atlas 4200, many other engines, you can actually set them on the block and the crank won't touch the ground. So that's what a skirted block is. And the problem with a skirted block is you can't run a kick out to help scavenge the oil off the crankshaft. Everything is in tight to the sides of the block. Now, it's good for rigidity for the main caps, but it's really bad for windage. Windage becomes a big issue. So on a skirted block, anytime you can run a dry sump system, you're going to be far ahead in the performance level of horsepower and oiling to do it that way. So that's something you really definitely want to look into when building an engine like that. And that's that's what we're trying to do. So anyway, it was a bummer that I didn't find a huge forget the pun, but smoking gun when I took the intake manifold off. But there was areas of the gasket was not stuck to the cylinder head where they had silicone. So and of course when you scrape the gasket off, you can't see the impression that the silicone left. So but I did find a few areas at the bottom of the gasket into the crankcase where it wasn't attached. So I have to feel that there was minimal amount of silicone there, and that was probably why it was leaking. It looks to me that they put a heavy bead of silicone on the top half of the gasket so there wouldn't be oil leaking out the manifold side on top. And maybe didn't get enough on the bottom. I don't know. But as I said in the video, you really typically try not to run silicone or RTV on any paper gasket. Water pumps and thermostat housings are notorious that if you put it on with the silicone wet, that it will actually push the gaskets out, and you'll actually see the gasket squeeze out. Timing covers, oil pans, anytime there's a paper gasket, you'll see if you use silicone, it will actually create like a ball bearing effect where it'll allow the gasket to walk out. Now, if you allow the silicone to skin, where the outside surface of it is not tacky anymore, then it works a little bit better, because now it's not going to work as much as a bearing. That's a good way of sealing up something. Oil pans. A lot of times on an aftermarket oil pan, I won't use the rubber rails on oil pans. I'll use silicone. So I'll go ahead and put a heavy bead there and let it skin, so that the intake, or the oil pan rather, kind of bites into the skin, and it forces it to make a big, thick RVT or silicone gasket, and it works really nice. If you let it skin, you can take it back apart again, and it'll stay intact. So again, if it's a motor you think you might have to take the oil pan back off, we would silicone the end rails and let that fully skin before we put it on. If you ever had a big thick gob of silicone, this outside surface will skin in about 4 to 5 minutes, but you can squeeze it and the inside of it is still soft. Kind of like an old tube of silicone that you can grab, and nothing will come out of the tube, but yet you can knead it back and forth with your thumbs, and you can feel it soft in the center, because it didn't cure 100%. It only cured where the air was getting to it, so it made a surface skin, but it didn't cure in the middle, unless you have proper heat or time or whatever on it. But just some tricks of the trade that I've learned over the years. It works really well. Going back to sealing up engines, if you got a cork gasket along the side rails of the engine block, I will use the aviation or the Forma gasket on the cork. That kind of works really well. It's tacky enough that it'll hold in place. But I try to do the same setup as I do with the intake gaskets. I'd use the gasket cinch on the block, clean it really good with lacquer thinner, and I'd use the gasket cinch to glue the cork to the block, and then use the Permatex Forma gasket from the cork to the oil pan surface. And it just works really well for not having the cork squeeze out and rip or whatever when you're tightening the pan bolts down, but yet it will seal up any imperfection that the cork isn't thick enough to take care of. So that works out real well. And of course, like I said, on the ends of the timing cover and the rear main seal, I use a thick bead of silicone back there, a little Forma gasket in between where they meet the cork, and it just works really well. Very seldom using that system will you ever have a oil pan leak or an intake gasket leak. The only caveat there is that if you have to move the part, like if you have an oil pan, it's really hard to get back on the engine, you're trying to do it in the car, or you have an intake that is kind of heavy or whatever, and you can't place it down and get it directly lined up with the ports, and you have to kind of move it around. You got to watch, because the silicone will roll, and you can create a new problem from handling the parts. So you just have to be real cognizant of all that, and really make sure that you pay attention when you're putting it together. Obviously, when you're doing it on the engine stand, it's much easier to do it than when you're working in the car trying to put pieces back together and stuff like that. But I have a good feeling we have the Corvette sorted now, because we've exhausted all other avenues. So, I've even done leak down, so I know the valves are sealing. So, it pretty much is the only thing left of it. So we'll get that done. Actually, I'll get that done tomorrow, and then get some drivability tuning done on that, and hopefully that will be finished, and we can get rid of that vehicle. And hopefully this weekend, now that I've got the the compressor building done. I don't have to think about that for a little while till I decide to trim it. I'd like to try to get back on the Cup car so I can get that finalized, get it in the get it on Marketplace and on. I'm probably going to put it on eBay and get that thing put up for sale. We're really close now. Things got pretty much everything needed to be done to be a legal IMSA or SVRA or HSR, SCCA, any of those sanctioning bodies, legal road race car. We've got the corner weights done. I've got the front alignment is good on it now. We got the big radiators in it. So brake ducts. I got to mount the fire system, the new fire system. So that's all legal now. And the last thing would be brake lights. But I've got all the components to do all that. So we'll get that knocked out here, hopefully sooner than later, and get that done because I got to get back on some of these other projects in the shop and get these things done. So that's pretty much what we've done this week. We did, like I said, I went over. We did got the Olnick up to the body shop. So that was a nice 22-mile drive. The engine has excellent performance. Man, the thing drives down the road, leaves stoplights, just like every other vehicle on the road. In fact, when we left Scott's storage warehouse and went out to Loxahatchee, out to the body shop, we actually had Scott's Camaro in the back of the truck. So it was actually loaded with a 3,200-pound Camaro in the back. So really good testing for it. I wasn't able to put the transmission into tow haul mode, which would even made it better, because we still don't have the shift points correct. They're a little high, but boy, the thing, you just get on the gas and it goes down the road. And I was following Scott. He was driving my dually, and I mean, I stayed on him the whole time. He wasn't, so stayed with traffic and stuff. Everything was good. So that engine swap is going to be ideal once we get all the sheet metal back on it and get the truck back out on the road. I still got a little list of things to do. I got to correct the LED lights for the tow haul mode. We got to get a transmission tune program in it, which to do that I have to find a EFI Live scan tool, and it has to be version 1 or 2, which are old, so you can't buy a new one. So I got to find a used one for sale and get that taken care of. And of course, once we have the sheet metal back on the thing, then we can drive it more like a normal vehicle, but with just the hood on it. And again, Scott's car was in the back of it, and it was probably 87, 88 degrees that day. And the engine coolant temperature fluctuated between 172 and 178 sitting at stoplights. So really happy with how that's come out so far. Everything is working great on it. We do need to put a bigger fuel filter on the inlet side of the fuel pump, the 100 micron, because we're pulling the fuel out of the bottom of the tanks. We're finding that the tanks have rust in them. So it's plugged up the fuel filter a couple times already. And actually now the fuel pump even has a little bit of whirring noise in it. So it's probably, the bearings probably got hot a couple times. So I'm going to go ahead and warranty out the fuel pump. And we're going to put a much larger 100 micron filter on the inlet side so that there's more surface area to trap the rust, so that hopefully we can do our due diligence with the filters and not get it to the point where we're starving the fuel pump. So there's a little punch out list that's left to be done on that. Dave and I went over a punch out list for the Chevelle. So we're going to try to maybe get that knocked out, some of that stuff next week, so that our portion of the build is now complete. So I just have I have to reprogram the Dakota Digital shift indicator. It wasn't programmed properly when I originally did it. So that'll show on the dash what position when you move the shifter. I have to do a calibration on the vintage air because right now it's blowing out the floor vents and doesn't seem to be switching back and forth. So hopefully a calibration on that will take care of that problem. And have an alarm system to install, or at least a remote for key fob so you can unlock the doors and roll the windows down from outside the car. And last but not least, we have a rear view mirror that has a camera for driving out the front. So that doesn't turn on. So I got to see if it's wired properly. I've checked that. So there may be, I have to go through the instructions. There may be a switch to turn it on and off, more than likely, so that it's not running 24/7 and filling up all your SD card with your inside of your garage. So I'm sure there's an on-off switch, and we just haven't located that yet. I haven't actually even looked. So we get those couple things done, and that'll get that all taken care of, and then we can send that off to the body shop for last details there, and Dave will have his car done and back. That'll be awesome. So the other thing we're working on, I'm going ahead and working on a list. Dave ordered more drip rails. Yeah, we'll try it. Gotta see. There's got to be a way that I've always envisioned a tool that you could, with like a wheel, kind of like not a can opener, but a can opener's got a twist that you can roll it. So something like that where it'd have two rollers so that after you snapped the, you could open up the edging so it would go on without snapping on, and then you could go back and re-crimp the molding, the drip rail molding to the actual drip rail. So I don't know, maybe we might take a look at that. We'll see. I have to I'll talk to my buddy Mike down at Ravenswood and see what tricks they used to get them on. Yeah, new method. Yeah, hopefully there is a new method. We need that because Bobby down at the body shop, I think he gave up on it after you have to trim them. Okay, well there you go. So yeah, that could be a very good point too. So we'll see what we can do with that. Get that thing done. But I'm trying to make up a punch out list for not a punch out list, a parts list for the fuel system for Chuck's truck. I want to get that thing ready to where we can bring it back in the shop and wire it and get the plumbing done and make it running and driving. And then we can start working on the intercooler, hot and cold side, and all that stuff. But we need to get it to where it will move on under its own power, so we can move forward on that. So creating that list so we can get that done. And the other thing I really have to get back on is on Dick's Buick T-Type. That thing has kind of gotten all the shop equipment stuck underneath it and kind of forgot about because it's up in the air unless when we're walking by it and we hit our head on the tires, which we've all done a bunch of times. But other than that, the car's kind of up there in Forgottenville. So I definitely want to get that back in the process and get things moving on that. This Corvette has definitely thrown us way behind on that. So that's kind of the updates on everything. I hope you guys found the tech tip on the smoke machine useful. I've got that Matco deal, but they're all over Amazon and Vivo and all your other tool sources. I even believe that Harbor Freight's even got one now that they sell. Very good tool for checking out all kinds of stuff on the car. You know, it was originally designed for emission testing because you've got fuel tank evap systems that the engine sucks the fuel vapors out because they don't want everything going out in the air. Where back in the old days we just ran it through a charcoal canister. So that's going to be what that smoke thing was originally made. But it's got so many uses like I said, you can check all kinds of different things. So think about that, and you might want to get yourself one. Ryan says drip rails are tricky, but it can be done. Well, Ryan, I may have to lean on you a little bit for some information too. We really need to get that thing done. Yeah, Dave says come on over. That would be a pretty good come on over from Utah to Florida. But let me know, Ryan, if you'd like to make a quick trip to Florida to do some drip rails. I'm sure Dave and I could help facilitate that. So let me know if you want to make a quick trip to the Sunshine State. But yeah, so we'll have to see what we can do with that. It really needs those rails. That's the last thing that the car needs. So that's all the updates. I've heard that the Smurf engine is back in process, so that should be coming back soon. Thursday, I've got Timothy's Camaro coming back. So I'm going to do a chassis setup on there. They've changed tire sizes, so that changes all the 4-link points. So I'll get some video on that. So I see on the chat, Ryan says, I'd love that. And Dave got right on there. We'll figure out tickets. So, yeah, if you really want to do that, Ryan, we'll get that stuff in. We'll maybe on a Saturday when Dave's here, we'll do a conference call or something and see if we can make something like that happen. That'd be great. But anyway, I think that's it for tonight's show. Appreciate everybody coming out. Listen to me ramble. Hopefully the smoke and intake leak thing might help somebody out one day. And, we'll try to get some more information. Next week I should have the crank back for the Buick, so we'll go over that. I really didn't have too much to show on that yet, but that's just about ready to get that project back going. That's been sitting for 2 years, so we definitely need to get that back going. And I could have a spoiler alert. Since Scott has taken his Corvette and his Le Mans back to LS Fest twice already, and unfortunately he's in the mindset that you can't keep taking the same car back. I think after Thanksgiving we may be putting an LS in his Vega wagon. So that could be something be really fun to do here in the future. And if anybody is looking for an old school 327, Scott will be putting, around Thanksgiving, we'll be putting that motor up for sale. It's aluminum head, flat tappet, solid lifter, little hot rod motor. Was dynoed at TEC. I think it made 435 horsepower, and the motor might have 4,000 miles on it. So, if anybody's looking for a good deal on a old school small block, keep that in mind. We'll get some videos and that we'll be putting that for sale. Probably, like I said, right around Thanksgiving. I can't get to it before that, and there's no sense taking the motor out if we don't have it sold first, because once the motor's out, then we can't show anybody the quality of the engine because it's on a stand. So anyway, Rick says, do you deliver to PA? That could be arranged. Yeah, I mean, if that's something if you get into a pickle with your small block, Rick, definitely if you had a thought about that, that could be a nice little ride for you. That little motor has got some stout horsepower. It drives awesome. I've driven that car to Columbus and back and never missed a beat. So unfortunately Rick showed me some pictures during the week on the small block he's putting in his 55. He broke up, had a bunch of head bolts break off, and that motor had been sitting for a long time, so they probably weren't coated originally properly, and so metal to metal with coolant going around them, they probably rusted into the thing, and now he's got to find a machine shop to get those out. So that may be something, Rick, or a block or something. We'll see. Let me know how that works out if you find a machine shop that's going to work on it, and let me know how that works out. Appreciate it, Ryan. Fun show. But yeah, so thanks for everybody watching. Again, we're gonna get some more stuff for next week. Remember, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Share it with your friends. Show them that we got this little hot rod bench racing session going on every Tuesday night, and we'll try to get some more info on for next week. So with that, I'm going to say thanks, everybody, and have a good night. See you all next week. See ya!